World-renowned human performance expert, executive coach, best-selling author.
And I want to congratulate Ron Kardashian.
Over 12,000 hours of one-on-one coaching and mentorship.
He's a health and cognitive expert.
Known as a spiritual confidant to respected industry leaders. CEO of 3 companies.
Coach and minister Ron Kardashian.
Good friend, Coach Ron Kardashian.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Always Winning in Leadership, the leadership code they didn't teach you. Train the heart, transform the outcome. This sounds very exciting. And I'll be back at the end of this coaching session to ask you some questions. So take it away, Coach Ron.
Thank you, Tim, as always. Hopefully my microphone's working better. We just upgraded some good mics. I want to dive right into this today because it's an important topic that I talk to a lot of executives about advancing their careers, about driving to the next level. And I call it a leadership coach, that code that they didn't teach us. And why elite leadership is shaped by regulation before strategy. Now, let me set the tone here and dive right into this. If you've got a notepad device, I have some notes here. I have a camera here. I have a camera here. I have a camera there. So I am 100% involved in you. And I want you to understand that most leaders are taught to sharpen their mind and strengthen their resume, refine their strategy. But emerging science shows that leadership under pressure is deeply influenced by the body's regulation systems and not just your resume, especially the heart-brain connection. This is the autonomic balance. This is emotional regulation. This is how you process thought, how you respond, react, and it is directly connected to a coaching concept we teach called tonal excellence, right? So in this episode, we're going to unpack why the best leaders don't merely think clearly, they regulate deeply. And this is a powerful tool that I want to teach you right here live. It's archived so you can listen to it over and over again. Understand that when the heart is trained, not just the brain, decisions sharpen, trust rises, career calling becomes easier to sustain. And this is research from Stanford, Yale, Cambridge, CCL, NIH. I mean, it's backed literature, several years now, and it's all pointing to the same direction. Write this down. Regulation is not soft, it's infrastructure, right? So understanding that context gives you as a leader, not just to train to build strategy. Very few were trained to regulate the system making the strategy. And I know, Tim, you and I talk a lot about this. It's not just training to regulate the system. It is training to regulate the system making the strategy, right? So the next frontier of leadership is not just IQ. It's not just charisma. It's not even experience. It's heart-led regulation, right? So let's break down the science here on the leadership code, and then let's get into some practical key points, okay? Your career is not shaped only by what you know. It's shaped by what your nervous system can sustain. Can't tell you how many people I get on LinkedIn that says, I get so nervous in the interview, coach, I can't even talk. Or when I do get in the interview, I find a point of regulation, but then I forget what I was going to say. Why does that happen? Because you cannot regulate a dysregulated person. You go offline, literally. A leader can have the right vision and still mismanage the moment because pressure exposes regulation capacity. And this is Stanford work on stress mindset, shows how people interpret stress changes performance outcome. And Stanford GBS has also emphasized that emotional regulation matters most in extreme moments of pressure, right? So the science they didn't teach the leaders here is the heart is not just a pump. In leadership conversations, we have to articulate that it is a command center. More accurately, it's part of a dynamic regulatory network. Now, the heart has its own intrinsic nervous system, and its signals are tied to introspection. They're tied to automatic regulation, or we call it autonomic, and then emotional processing. And this is why internal state affects perception, and why this woman was telling me her decision making and her presence were not on point. Leadership is not only a thinking problem, it is an internal signaling problem. And once you get this down, there is no sales pitch if you're an entrepreneur, because you slightly are irregulated if you're trying to close the deal too hard. It's not about closing the deal, it's about substantiating value and providing solutions. And you are not in a solution mindset when you're hypervigilant and dysregulated. Okay. Now, why does this matter for you under pressure? There's a coaching metric that we're using, kind of like a blood pressure tool, and we call it HRV tool, heart rate variability. And it's a marker tied to this regulation system in association with emotional regulation and executive function, as well as decision making. It covers all of these. Now, in 2022, when I really started adapting this, there was a meta analysis found that a positive association between your HRV, really vaguely mediated HRV, and executive function, meaning the vagal nerve, right, that starts here on the base of the neck, it actually is here, drops down into the left atrium. You wonder why people have massive heart attacks, because this nerve here creates this stability, right? It drops into the left atrium, and calcification can begin if you're under chronic stress. I'm dealing with an executive right now, eats well, he exercises, he's in his 70s, and the doctor said you've got signs of cholesterol buildup. How is that possible? Vagal nerve is sending mixed signals, heart saying, I need to build up a support system around you because this is dangerous to me. They call it the widowmaker. All of a sudden you have a massive heart attack. Why? Because the body is not processing this executive function the right way, right? There's two pathways in the limbic system, which we'll talk about later, but basically parasympathetic and sympathetic. And I keep talking about this until you get it down. Parasympathetic is like putting on the gas. You're in your flow. You're on your A game. You're on point. Sympathetic is activating the amygdala, fight, flight, or freeze. So it's important to understand a little bit about your biology so you can optimize your corporate goals, your function, your role, your destiny, your calling, your career, your wealth, all of it, right? One of the key components I coach wealth managers in is helping them walk their clients off the ledge. That's emotional regulation, right? And especially cognitive inhibition. Well, we don't talk about this. And cognitive flexibility. When you have these markers in, it gives you an edge. And that's reviews in 2022, 23, 24. They similarly connect, Tim, HRV with decision making, emotional regulation, and better executive function. Now, when regulation improves, leaders often gain these three things. Write this down: better inhibition under pressure, better flexibility in conflict, and better clarity before reaction. You wonder why people are coming and getting coaching from me and they're hitting all their goals. Well, it's not about paying for a service, it's about achieving the outcome that they're after. Let's just achieve the outcome that you're after, and then you can complain about price later. They never complain. In fact, they re-enroll, because this isn't hype. This is physiology meeting leadership performance. All right? Now, let's talk about emotional intelligence, because this is the epitome of our framework. And Tim, please feel free to jump in, because I don't want to rant too long. Let's just do about 10 more minutes, and then we're going to wrap up. We'll pick this up next week. I'm going to be discussing 2026. Took my breath away there for a minute. We're already here. We're on the first quarter. It's done. We're in April. How's the time of this recording? And so it's important that you understand time is short. So we got to maximize every day. Let me give you this point from Yale, who I found did an unbelievable job on their work showing that something about bosses. It showed that bosses who act with emotional regulation, really, let's just stick with emotional intelligence first. Emotional regulation is a subset of emotional intelligence. So the peak of it is they foster happier and more creative employees. So Yale's continue to emphasize that emotionally intelligent leadership basically shapes positive work environments. The climate changes, the motivation changes, the innovation changes. And what that does is it reduces burnout, which is huge. Now, also, the CCL likewise reported that empathy is positively related to job performance, and that leaders higher in emotional intelligence build more trust and engagement. So you see this, that the leader's internal climate becomes the team's external climate. And this is my whole teaching on epigenetics. You are definitely being impacted by the people that are in your inner circle. And we know this is true because the studies will tell us, over and over again, the leader's internal climate becomes the team's external climate. Epigenetics, epi means beyond genetics. So there is something shaping us beyond our genetics. What is it? Environment and programming, right? Now, this is the missing bridge, and I'm glad I wrote this down. I teach this concept in my practice called From Regulation to Calling. And here's where you can make a really impactful move in your career, in your job as a CEO. And I wrote this down. A person's calling pathway is not accelerated by ambition alone. It's accelerated when purpose, regulation, and behavior align. Research from Wharton and Penn has linked meaningful work and purpose with higher job performance, organizational citizenship, behavior, and stronger engagement. And this is what people are looking for. They want to see that you are really engaged in your work, but you cannot be engaged dysregulated. And I think it's important for us to master this concept. Other work on purpose in life has associated it with better cognitive performance and healthier emotional behavior patterns. I mean, the research doesn't prove that heart training causes destiny, but it strongly supports this interface in a leadership bridge, of understanding that leaders who regulate well are more able to sustain clarity, which is a form of meaning, which is a form of trust, and then decision quality, which makes purposeful career progress more likely and more durable. Does that make sense, Tim? I'm sure you're nodding your head here, right? And so I guess leads me to my close: is why do we plateau? Is and why do I get fatigued? And what's happening to me mentally, coach, emotionally, physically, spiritually? Because most leadership ceilings are not intelligence ceilings, they're regulation ceilings. And plateau happens when, you just write these down, pressure outruns identity. This is important because the identity pathway is something that I'll do a whole segment on, because if your identity is wrapped in the work and the work environment becomes pressuresome, your identity will become pressuresome. My identity is not in me as a coach, you know. My identity is not, if I were to lose my coaching career, then I would lose my identity. It's higher than that. That's a spiritual matter, irregardless of what your spiritual belief is. This is your tripartite people, and we'll get into that later. In fact, I'm going to do a YouTube live directly after the show. If you're interested in more of the spiritual revelation and the integration of your spirit, soul, body, then join the broadcast. The second thing that pressure or plateaus, you can see a plateau, is reaction outruns reflection. I'm guilty of that. I was very reactionary. I was wondering why people were saying to me, coworkers, my spouse, at the time, my children, close friends. It's like, why are you being so reactionary? Well, I had lost reflection. I had lost my ability to reflect on why I was feeling the way I was feeling. That's because I was plateauing. And then, of course, here's a big one that I just dealt with: an executive. Their title outruns inner capacity. Okay, you got promoted, but you have no wherewithal within inside you. This is an internal framework, and it's not me who developed this. Stanford's work on stress and mindset suggests that, I got it here, suggests mindset shapes the stress response. And mindful leadership, work from Stanford, it argues that self-awareness and emotional regulation become especially valuable when pressure rises, right? So I like to say, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your regulation. Regulation, my friends, regulator. I have this gentleman, I said, I want you to start saying, I'm a regulated father. I'm guilty of that one, you know. So let me give you these three things. We'll wrap up, right? Because here's a practical framework. I want you to train your heart. Pause before you perform. I want to teach you to create a short interruption between stimulus and response through breath work, posture, tension. Sit up. My camera cuts me off, so sit up, breathe out. And that's consistent with research linking that autonomic regulation and emotional regulation together, right? The vagal nerve, drop it into the heart. It's right there. So we're going to stimulate the heart, boom, go right into the brain. That's number one. Number two, name the state. Name it. Name what you're in. Introspection, right? Introspection matters because people lead better when they can detect what's happening inside them before it drives behavioral and consciousness. Guilty. So I would be reactionary every time. Still working on this. This is a big one. This is powerful. You know, the US military trains us. I really regret not going into the military. I'd even started thinking about it now, even at my age. There's always been a fighter on the inside. But for the inner discipline, and I talk to God about this all the time. You don't need to go to military. He goes, I'll put you through boot camp. And I should have been careful what I prayed for, because I am in a serious boot camp even now. And I'm training to go to the next level. So the people that are around me right now, they're all going to the next level. And I think that's important when you're working with a coach. It's not just eloquence of speech and their big Rolls Royce or their private jets. All of that is so superficial. It's cool and it shows their accomplishment, but their real accomplishment is in vagal tone. They're not just firing sales pitches at you to try to convince you to work with them. You got to be careful who you're associated with. So that's number two, name the state. Number three, reframe presence. Reframe presence because that's a reframe of pressure. So you're going to move from stress is killing me. You're not going to say this anymore to stress is calling me to regulate. That's what I'm starting to say now. God, help me regulate a dysregulated man. Give me authority over my inner world. Because Stanford's stress mindset work supports the idea that appraisal, I'm taking an appraisal of my internal system, changes the outcome. Like that. That's why I wrote a book, 30-Second Solution, is because in a matter of 30 seconds, the cerebrofrontal cortex can either go online or offline. Just think about yourself in traffic. All of a sudden, you're driving. Ram, someone cuts you off. Ooh, your posture changes. You're explosive. You're reacting. I'm still working on this one. But I'm like 70% better. I used to overreact all the time. That's showing progress because none of us are going to be perfect. So get rid of the perfect mindset, right? Let's move on to the last one. Align behavior with purpose, number four. So you have pause before performance, name the state, reframe pressure, and now align behavior with purpose. Bring in calling. What does the version of me assigned to this role do next? Your calling, the version of my new me assigned to this role do next. How do I elevate myself? Just start thinking like that, because research on meaningful work and personal purpose suggests alignment matters for motivation and performance, not just thought process. You're aligning with your internal parameters, right? So the future does not only belong to the smartest leader in the room, it belongs to the most regulated one. And if you want to lead at a level of your calling, stop training only your mind. Train the system that carries your mind under pressure, right? And get yourself assessed. Can't stress that enough. If any of you are interested, we do a brain assessment, do it all online, no equipment, no brain cap, no injections, just straight up Q&A. Let's find your brain and you move on to a new dimension of heart regulation. Does that tie in well, Tim?
It does. This is some great stuff. It's interesting. As I've been thinking about my corporate career. For those of you who don't know, I've spent over 20 years in Fortune 100 companies, from individual contributor to leading large teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to target to a specific audience here. So, because most of my career was in product management. And what's interesting is in the product management frameworks, one of the activities that you're supposed to do that most companies skip is what's called retrospective. The team gets together,
Yes.
they're evaluating themselves, the processes, all that kind of stuff. But yet, most of the time, because of the pressure of get things done, that just gets ignored. And maybe
Yeah.
some leaders, because they want the checkbox, they'll walk through the practice, but never actually implement any of this.
Yes.
And so what I want to tie for some business leaders, and it will lead to a question here in a minute, but all business leaders are familiar with the Eisenhower matrix of prioritizing important, urgent, and so forth. The infrastructure things that you're talking about here are the important things that on the surface never seem urgent. But when
Hmm.
ignored over the course of your career, like CEO you brought up, it actually will build something that is urgent in your life. Same thing for the life source of your company. And so the question that I have here is when you're already in a rat race of a environment, let's say you're not the senior leader, let's say you're one of the assistant leaders, or you're just an individual contributor. By the way,
Hmm.
individual contributors have a lot of power. But when
Yes.
you're in an environment where the leaders do not see these things as important and they continually and routinely ignore them, how can they begin to change that environment even as an individual contributor?
When the value of a thing is not known, destruction is inevitable. When a value of a thing, you don't understand the internal process, don't understand the value of heart brain connection, don't understand your value there at the organization, you as CEO, destruction is inevitable. So you will destroy the very assets that you were created to govern.
That's powerful. I'm
I
sitting
wish
there 'cause oh, go ahead.
I wish that was my own. It was one of my mentors who told me that. And I'm thinking, and he said, look, if you don't know the value of the vacuum, you will end up destroying it, whether it sits and decays or you end up blowing it up. You don't know the value of a treadmill and keep complaining that you're out of shape.
Yeah,
It's sitting there collecting dust or a clothes hanger. So you can bring this all the way down, but to the point of your corporate concepts of leadership development and the internal operating system, we've got to understand how valuable we really are.
that's amazing. So I wanna go back here because earlier on in the show, you were talking about pressure
Yes.
and how it exposes the regulation maturity of an individual.
Yes.
And most of the time, because there's a few companies that I've been at that did this fairly well, but
Hmm.
most companies don't. They promote based on someone who is either the hero all the time, they're the ones fighting the fires, and they're really not regulated, but because they're
Hmm.
perceived as the hero of the situation,
Hmm.
they look like they're handling pressure very well, and then they get promoted, and the people who've worked for leaders like that, it's a really bad environment to work under.
Oh,
How do
100%.
I mature my own so going back, I'm not the leader, I'm the individual contributor reporting to this kind of leader. How do I mature my own pressure being exposed under this regulation and under this heavy pressure from a not regulated person? How do I, who's an infant in regulating myself, begin to mature myself and then influence that leader?
That's a really, really powerful point of view for you to say that because I just dealt with it last week. CFO completely blew his lid and completely sent a surge into the company, even though he was on the phone with one senior leader. That senior leader was so affected by it that he began to perpetuate the conversation to the outside environments. With the
Wow.
sales team, with executive leaders. So there's a ripple effect. First of all, if you are executive leader and you are losing it like that, pick up the phone and invest in yourself. Oftentimes, the company will subsidize some leadership development coaching. And I have an executive regulation program. Tim, you're one of my coaches. We can help with that and very quickly. And that will change the game of sales. That will change the game of internal program and operations. The whole ethos changes. Now, from the perspective that you're asking on, what if I was the guy that was being abused?
Yeah.
First of all, you have to name your state. How did that make you feel? And I gave you these points. You're going to pause and you're going to reflect. Name that state because introspection gives you an edge. And what you have to identify with is this person is abusive. And if I don't put up a boundary, he or she is going to do it again. And you need to be bold enough to put in an email or in a conversation. I understand your pain point, but unfortunately for me, if that happens again, then I'm going to have to remove myself from the call. You right away establish your own boundaries, irregardless of the fear factor that you feel that you may get fired. The likelihood of you getting fired is not high, but the amygdala goes into fight, flight, or freeze. So now your sympathetic nervous system is offline and you're not as creative. Stay in the creative mode by owning your state, and that is, I am not someone who is abused. This is important because abnormal use is abuse. Any way you look at it, it's not just physical anymore, it's verbal. And to yell at somebody like that is verbal abuse. And you have every right as a human being to put your foot down. You must breathe into yourself and then apply the reframe pressure, right? And then conclude with number 4, align your behavior with purpose. In that, now I know how it feels to be yelled at like that. And you become a better person. And watching you regulate, which incidentally the executive did do, he didn't fire back, really laid back dude, very relaxed. He took it like a man and processed it, but his internal organs were completely disruptive. That's a GI tract issue now, gastroenterological issues that could slow down mortality, that can build infection. I mean, understanding this biology, Tim, is bigger than we are, and thank God our programs address the biology part.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
So I want to move into my next question here, and because the regulation before strategy, man, the number of
Yeah.
strategy meetings where it felt like it was popcorn strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Why? You know, at the time, I didn't know any of this, and as I'm looking back and listening to everything you've said today, it was really exposing how dysregulated the leaders are.
Mm-hmm.
When the strategy is reactive versus intentional, it
Yeah.
is due to the fact that your leader is not regulating. Now, this is a moment, though, not to attack your leader. This is a moment for you to help them shine and bring some regulation to the forefront.
Yeah.
See, when you are a regulated individual contributor and you can help bring calm to the storm, guess what? That leader is going to relax. And
Yeah.
now I want to bring up to the audience because you're so good at articulating this, coach. When you can bring a leader to relax and remove out of that blockage of the amygdala being in that fight, flight, or freeze mode, what
Mm-hmm.
happens then to the brain?
Boy, powerful shift. You move from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, which is the turning on of the creative flow again. In my first book, 30-Second Solution, I went to see Dr. Amen on this because I told him, and he's a world renowned psychologist. I said, if you tell me that in 30 seconds we can't switch, then I'm not going to write the book. But I had this revelation watching real time, one on one coaching, watching these executives shift. But I'm not a psychologist, so I didn't have the science. So when I went to him and told him, he said to me, most definitely, Ron, and it can happen in less than 30 seconds. Of course,
Uh-huh.
30 seconds was just the catch all. So what happens is you get back into parasympathetic, which is putting on the gas pedal where creativity flows, ideas and innovation flow. There's a steady calmness over you. And this is what disrupts that statement that I made earlier about you cannot regulate a dysregulated person. The other area that you can want to watch out for is 30 minutes after you wake up. You do not want to get into heated conversations. If you're abruptly woken up by the kids or your wife or something happens, this is the most critical time because the brain is still offline. I don't know if you've noticed you're kind of irritable, sometimes in the morning if there's heavy discussion going on. Your brain is coming back online because all through the night it detoxes. It has its own detox system. And it is constantly, this is why sleep studies are so monumental in leadership development and performance, because it gives the body recovery. And oftentimes you'll find that you could be emotionally dysregulated because you're overtired, you're not sleeping enough. And I will hear executives say, I don't have time for sleep. Well, you don't have time not to sleep because that actually makes you sharper. Now I'm to the point where we're working smarter, not harder. I've reduced my workload. I try to take off over 120 days a year. I wasn't able to do that in the very beginning, but now through mastery and regulation, I am able to shift prioritization, whether it's on my team or my own life or the clients that I take, and it helps me stay more regulated. Why? At the end of the day, it's all about my health and well being. That's paramount because without you or me, our businesses don't exist. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
man, time flew by on this one. I had another
Yeah.
question, but we are at the
We'll do
limit.
it next week. Yeah. This is so good.
So,
Thank you for being such an exceptional host. I so appreciate you.
thank you. Same here. So I hope
Yes,
this was
sir.
helpful to all of you. Take these steps, start applying them, start in the home.
Yeah.
That's my recommendation. Got to start in the home.
Yeah.
I love one of Ron's other quotes is, man, the person you are in the bedroom is the person you're going to be in the boardroom.
In the boardroom.
And so if
Took
this
me
is
a
going to
long
move
time to
you,
learn that, and I'm still learning it for the record, as well as a lot of people. So don't beat yourself up.
yes. And so, yes, definitely don't beat yourself up. Have some grace, some forgiveness. When you're immature in this, it's going to take some time. So
Yeah.
have grace and reach out to us. We're here to help you.
Yes.
And so, with that, any final thoughts?
If you're interested in getting a digital read, not just on your blood work, we don't do blood here, we do brain work. We will provide an executive assessment for you. We're offering tremendous discounts right now for summer. Just DM wherever you're watching this, say brain assessment or brain. You can also reach out to us at elitelevelcoach@gmail.com. We've got a wonderful staff, beautiful presence in the Silicon Valley. We do 99% of our coaching online. There's no reason why you're not worth the investment. Show yourself that you value you and watch how much people start valuing you as well. I'm Coach Ron Kardashian, Tim Boyko. This is Always Winning in Leadership, where we rewire, refire to go higher.